I joined the Army National Guard in October of 1996. I was full-time with them until December 2020 when I retired with a little over 20 years of active federal service. So my story really is I got into the military to do a lot of things for everybody else, you know, that greater good. That's rarely are you gonna run into a military person that doesn't want to do something for the greater good. And in 2017, I was deployed. It was my oldest son's senior year. Talked to him about it before we left. We did his graduation party before I left, but about a month and a half after I left, he graduated high school, which I wasn't there. And he said, "Mom, you're gonna get to see me graduated again when I graduate from college. So don't worry about it. You missed this one, but this was just the practice." And so I went through deployment. I came back in November for leave and saw everybody. Look, my son was doing great. It was his first semester of college. He was doing wonderful things. He was helping out at a hospital. And he just seemed like everything was good. Well, about 3 weeks later, I was coming home. I got home on December 22nd. My husband and my kids all came to the airport, minus my oldest son. And my husband said, "Hey." I said, "Well, where's Michael?" And he said, "Well, Mike was going to a college party tonight, so he wasn't gonna make it." And I said, "Oh, okay." I knew something was kind of up from when I'd talked to him the 2 days prior, but I thought, well, I'll just talk to him tomorrow. So December 23rd rolls around. My husband, in his infinite wisdom, had done no Christmas shopping. So we left that morning to go do some Christmas shopping. We didn't see my son's car there, which was odd because he was not an early riser by anybody's stretch of the imagination. But we thought, oh, well, we'll see him in the afternoon. Well, by the afternoon, he wasn't home, and he wasn't responding to texts. He wasn't responding to phone calls. So we started getting some of his friends involved. Hey, can you find out where he's at? Finally, later on that evening, we ended up calling the police. I told my husband, I said, "I have a feeling Mike's not coming home unless we call the police and somebody brings him home." So my husband's all pissed off because he's like, "You know what? He's just being a stupid teenage boy. He's probably drunk somewhere, just doing something stupid." And I'm like, that's great. If he's drunk somewhere doing something stupid, I just need to know. I need him to come home. And this was right after Sydney Loof, so of course we're all like, worst case scenario, maybe he met the wrong person and now where's he at, you know? December 24th rolls around. We don't really sleep that night, December 23rd. December 24th rolls around and we're like, now it's real. We've got to tell people he's missing. So we did that, and again, got his friends involved with it, trying to help find him. We couldn't find him. And then I talked to my in-laws and they're like, "Hey, have you checked his bank accounts?" And I'm like, "No, I haven't. That's a great idea." So I did, and I found out where he'd stayed. He'd stayed at a hotel the night before, and I called them. Sure enough, they described my kid, right? They said, yeah, he woke up. We ended up having to kick him out of the hotel. And I said, "Okay, what time did he leave?" So give me a time, and I call the police, and I'm like, "Hey, here's what time he left. I need somebody to check it out, you know." And it was maybe a half hour later, two plainclothes officers came. They came to our door. And I thought, wow, that's fast. I never expected the police to be here that quickly. So they asked if they could talk to my husband and I. And we said, "Yeah, come on in." And they said, "Hey, can your other kids go downstairs?"
sure, what's going on? And they asked about one of our firearms. I said, yeah, we have one of those. And they said, we found your son. And he died by suicide. And all the things you think you're gonna do if you find out one of your children died. I thought I'd be screaming and just crazy. And I just sat there in disbelief, in shock. And we're like, there's no way. There's no way this kid did this. He was so resilient, and we had no idea what was going through. So that really rocked our world quite a bit. Mike was just, he was, the week before, he'd taken his brothers to spend some time just the way he was. He went and took him bowling, he went and took him to round one so they could play video games, and he had told his dad, hey, I'll see you tomorrow, when he left on the 22nd. And just the thought of never seeing him again and having to make those phone calls and knowing that I'd never talk to him or get a hug from him again, that was really distressing. And there's several days where I just didn't eat, and my husband was really worried about that. But then once I got past that initial shock, I was able to, just by virtue of being in the military, I'm like, okay, I gotta make a checklist, right? And I gotta know what I gotta do to get through this. And so started getting through the checklist. And I think one of the hardest things for me was when I got to that last item on the checklist. And I knew that was me completely closing out Mike's life. And not knowing how to move on from that. And not knowing how to keep him alive for other people as well. So, I could, something like that happens, and I could not tell you what I did for probably 3 months following his death. I was in a fog. I showed up to work. I did what I need. I don't even know what they had me doing at that time. But I was one of those folks that, man, you give me something and I'll give you like 3 times what you want. And I could barely get those things done. And it took me a long time to be able to accept that person that I was before Mike's death was just a different person. And to accept that I needed to be something different. Or that I was somebody different now. Because that hole in my heart was never gonna get filled by anything. Mike was gone. And the only way he could come back is if I allowed him to come back through some of the work. So I tried to do the greater good for a long time, but after a couple of years, about 2, I realized that the military, the sacrifices I made they weren't worth the cost for me and for my family anymore. And I couldn't do it anymore. So, I retired, but right before I retired, this opening came up to be the suicide prevention coordinator for the Nebraska National Guard. And I thought, man, I can still help people out, and I can still help families out, and I can still be with my Army family, still taking care of them. And so that's what I did, and that's what I do. That's how I keep Michael alive in this world. He always wanted to help other people out, and through his death, I like to think that he is still helping people out with the things that we do. So there you go. That's my story. So this really affected my life, and my kids. I've realized that, you always think you're gonna have tomorrow, and you don't necessarily get tomorrow. And if you see something that looks off, you gotta say something right away, right? Because you may not have an hour, you may not have tomorrow. Even my husband and I, it's changed our communication styles. Instead of holding on, well, we still hold on to anger. That's just part of being married, right? But we're a lot more candid with each other when it comes to that, because it's not worth holding on to that. And it also, it changed just a lot. I realized my husband and I deal with things very, very differently. He doesn't understand how I do what I do every day, but he's super supportive of it. And he is starting to take some time to really learn from what I tell him. And he's still got his own opinions, just like everybody else, right? But I've really learned just to kind of accept people for who they are and where they're at in life, and just try and support them as best you can. So I really wanted to be here and tell my story today, not because I really think I look all that great on camera, but I think there's a lot of people out there that feel very alone, and they don't know that there's hope out there, and they don't know how to deal with what they've been through. As a survivor of suicide loss, and I truly feel like there is some survival that goes in there. There are so many things that you go through, and you don't know that other people are going through. But you can do some positive things. You can make a difference, and just one person can make that difference. And if you'll hear me talk about Mike all the time. He's here. He is why I'm doing what I'm doing. And while I would take it all back to have him back, I know that through the work that I do now, and through talking about it and being really open, that I'm helping other folks. I know that there are people that I have talked to that were probably on the brink of making a choice that they couldn't come back from. And the other piece is showing people that you can grow from your pain. You can grow from your loss. You can do a lot of things. And some people want to let that they want to let the negative determine how the rest of their lives go. And you can use it as a reason to not move forward, or you can use it as a reason to grow and become a better person and let your loved one live on through the work that you do. So the advice I'd give to other people working through trauma is not all trauma looks the same. And while some people may look at it and say that's not trauma, it's how you feel about it. And don't let other people tell you what you should be doing or how you should be doing it. listen to the advice, but figure out a way to make that trauma something that's positive and that can positively impact those in your community. There's always hope after trauma.